Miami, Florida. Carlos Lehder walked into a warehouse on Biscayne Boulevard to meet his new business partner. A woman stepped out of the shadows. 5'2", 135 pounds, dark hair, soft voice. Her name was Griselda Blanco, but everyone called her the Godmother. Carlos extended his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Griselda looked at his hand but didn't shake it. "You'll shake my hand when you've earned it. Right now, you're just another man who thinks he can survive Miami." Carlos pulled his hand back. "I've survived worse than Miami." Griselda smiled, cold, predatory. "We'll see." What Carlos didn't know was that Griselda Blanco had already killed 14 people that year. She had executed 2 of her own husbands. She had ordered a hit on a rival's 2-year-old son to send a message. She controlled the entire Miami cocaine trade, and she was the most dangerous person Carlos Lehder would ever meet. This is the story of the woman who made the king of cocaine fear for his life. To understand why Carlos Lehder feared Griselda Blanco, you need to understand who Griselda was. Griselda Blanco was born in Cartagena, Colombia, in 1943. She grew up in extreme poverty in Medellin slums. By age 11, Griselda had committed her first murder. She kidnapped a wealthy child from her neighborhood, demanded ransom, and when the family couldn't pay, Griselda shot the child herself. She was 11 years old. By age 20, Griselda was running prostitution rings in Medellin. By age 30, she was smuggling cocaine into the United States. And by 1975, Griselda Blanco had moved to Miami and taken over the entire cocaine distribution network. How? Through absolute brutality. Griselda didn't negotiate. She didn't warn. She didn't give second chances. If you crossed Griselda, you died. If you stole from Griselda, your entire family died. If you looked at Griselda the wrong way, you might die just to send a message to someone else. Between 1975 and 1985, Griselda Blanco was responsible for over 200 murders in Miami. She pioneered the motorcycle assassination technique. 2 men on a motorcycle, one driving, one shooting, disappearing into traffic within seconds. This method became standard for cartels worldwide. But Griselda's brutality went beyond business. She killed her second husband, Alberto Bravo, in a shootout in a Bogotá parking lot in 1975, shot him 6 times herself. She ordered the murder of her third husband, Dario Sepulveda, in 1983 because he tried to kidnap their son during a custody dispute. She once ordered a hit on a rival trafficker's 2-year-old child because the father testified against her in court. Griselda Blanco was not just a drug trafficker. She was a serial killer who happened to run a billion-dollar cocaine empire. And by 1978, when Carlos Lehder arrived in Miami, Griselda controlled everything. She had distribution networks across the entire East Coast. She had corrupt police on her payroll. She had judges, prosecutors, politicians. Miami was Griselda's city, and Carlos Lehder was about to walk into her territory. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button right now because the meeting between Carlos and Griselda is one of the tensest moments in drug trafficking history. Carlos Lehder arrived in Miami in early 1978. He had just started his Norman's Cay operation. He was flying cocaine from Colombia to the Bahamas, then smuggling it into Florida. But Carlos had a problem. He could get cocaine into Miami, but he couldn't distribute it. He didn't know the city. He didn't have connections with local dealers. He didn't have street-level networks. Carlos needed someone who controlled Miami's distribution, and everyone told him the same name, Griselda Blanco. Carlos was hesitant. He'd heard the stories, the murders, the violence, the unpredictability, but Carlos also knew that in the cocaine trade, you don't pick partners based on morality. You pick them based on capability, and Griselda was capable. So Carlos arranged a meeting through mutual contacts in Medellin, March 1978, a warehouse in Miami. Carlos arrived with 2 bodyguards. Griselda arrived with 6. They sat across from each other at a metal table. Carlos laid out his proposal. "I can bring 500 kilos a week into Miami, pure Colombian cocaine. You distribute it. We split 50-50. Griselda listened, didn't interrupt, didn't react. When Carlos finished, Griselda leaned forward. "I don't do 50-50. Carlos raised an eyebrow. "What do you do?" "I take 60%. You take 40%. Because this is my city, my distribution, my risk. You're just a delivery boy." Carlos felt his jaw tighten. Nobody talked to him like that. But he was in Miami, Griselda's territory. "Fine," Carlos said. 60-40. Griselda smiled. "Good. Now here are my rules." She counted on her fingers. 1. You don't sell to anyone in Miami except through me. If I find out you're making side deals, I kill you. 2. You don't talk to my people. You don't recruit my dealers. You don't try to build your own network here. If I find out you are, I kill you. 3. If you ever betray me, I don't just kill you. I kill everyone you love. Your family, your friends, everyone. Understood? Carlos stared at her. He'd worked with Pablo Escobar. He'd partnered with Klaus Barbie. He'd dealt with the most dangerous men in the cocaine trade. But Griselda Blanco was different. She wasn't making threats. She was stating facts. Carlos nodded. Understood. Good, Griselda said. We start next week. And just like that, Carlos Lehder and Griselda Blanco became partners. Subscribe and smash that like button, because what happens next shows just how dangerous Griselda really was. For the next 2 years, from 1978 to 1980, Carlos Lehder and Griselda Blanco ran the most profitable cocaine operation in Miami history. Carlos flew cocaine from Norman's Cay into Florida. Griselda distributed it across Miami, New York, and the entire East Coast. Between them, they were moving over 2,000 kilos a month. Street value $200 million per month. Carlos's cut $80 million per month. Griselda's cut $120 million per month. But working with Griselda came with constant fear, because Griselda didn't just kill her enemies. She killed people randomly to maintain her reputation. In 1979, Griselda suspected one of her couriers was skimming money. She invited him to her house for dinner. They ate, they drank, they laughed. Then Griselda pulled out a gun and shot him in the head at the dinner table, in front of his wife, in front of his children. Griselda looked at the wife and said, "Clean this up. If you talk to the police, you're next." The wife cleaned it up, never spoke to police. That was Griselda. Carlos witnessed this brutality firsthand. In early 1980, one of Carlos's pilots was late delivering a shipment, not because he stole anything, not because he betrayed anyone. He was late because his plane had mechanical issues and he had to make an emergency landing. When he finally arrived in Miami, Griselda was waiting. She walked up to the pilot, smiled and shot him twice in the chest. Carlos ran over. "What the hell are you doing? He didn't betray us. It was mechanical failure." Griselda reloaded her gun calmly. "I don't care. He was late. If I let one person be late without consequences, everyone thinks they can be late. This is how I keep control." Carlos stared at her. "You just killed an innocent man." Griselda shrugged. "There are no innocent men in this business." That's when Carlos realized something. Griselda Blanco was not his partner. She was a ticking time bomb, and eventually that bomb would go off. Carlos started planning his exit from Miami. He didn't tell Griselda. That would be suicide. But Carlos began quietly moving his distribution to other cities: Atlanta, Houston, Los Angeles. He started building networks outside of Griselda's control. By late 1980, Carlos was sending less and less product to Miami. Griselda noticed. "Drop a comment below telling me, would you have stayed in business with Griselda, or would you have run?" November 19. "We need to talk." Carlos knew what that meant. In Griselda's world, "we need to talk" usually ended with someone dying. Carlos showed up to the meeting with 4 armed bodyguards. Griselda showed up with 8. They met at the same warehouse where they'd first partnered. Griselda didn't waste time. "You're cutting me out. You're sending product to other cities. You're building your own distribution without me." Carlos kept his voice steady. "Business is expanding. I'm not cutting you out. I'm diversifying." Griselda leaned forward. Her voice was ice. "Don't lie to me, Carlos. I know what you're doing. You're scared of me. So you're trying to leave Miami without telling me." Carlos didn't deny it. "You're right. I am scared of you. You kill people for being late. You kill people for looking at you wrong. I can't work like that." Griselda smiled. Not a friendly smile, a predator's smile. "So what are you going to do? Leave?" "Yes." Silence. Then Griselda laughed. Not a fake laugh, a genuine, amused laugh. "Good. Get out of Miami. I don't need you anymore anyway. I've got my own suppliers now." Carlos was stunned. He expected a fight, a threat, violence. Instead, Griselda was letting him go. "But let me be clear," Griselda continued. "You leave Miami. You stay out of Miami. If I ever see you in my city again, I will kill you myself. Understood?" Carlos nodded. "Understood. Good. Now get out." Carlos left Miami that night. He never came back, and he never spoke to Griselda Blanco again. Subscribe right now, because Griselda's story doesn't end here. What happens to her is one of the most brutal endings in cartel history. After Carlos left Miami in 1980, Griselda Blanco continued ruling the cocaine trade, but her brutality was attracting too much attention. The DEA had been investigating Griselda since 1975. They knew she was responsible for hundreds of murders. They knew she controlled Miami's cocaine distribution, but they couldn't catch her. Griselda was too careful, too smart, too protected. She had corrupt cops warning her about raids. She had lawyers who made evidence disappear. She had judges who dismissed cases. Griselda seemed untouchable. But in 1984, Griselda made a critical mistake. She trusted the wrong person. One of Griselda's top enforcers, a man named Jorge Rivi Ayala, was arrested for murder. Rivi had killed over 30 people for Griselda. He was facing the death penalty, and the DEA made him an offer. Testify against Griselda Blanco. Give us everything. We'll take the death penalty off the table. Rivi agreed. In 1985, Rivi testified that Griselda had personally ordered over 40 murders. He described how Griselda planned hits, how she chose targets, how she celebrated after successful killings. He provided dates, names, locations. The evidence was overwhelming. On February 17, 1985, DEA agents raided Griselda's mansion in Irvine, California. Griselda had moved there from Miami in 1984, thinking she'd be safer. She was wrong. The DEA broke down her door at 6 a.m. Griselda tried to run. She didn't make it. She was arrested in her bathrobe, screaming at the agents, threatening them. "You're all dead. Do you know who I am? I will kill your families." The agents didn't care. Griselda Blanco, the godmother of cocaine, was finally in custody. She was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and drug trafficking. If convicted, she faced the death penalty. Griselda's trial began in 1985 and lasted for 3 years. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, testimonies from Rivi Ayala and other former associates, phone records, financial documents, witness statements. Griselda's defense argued that she was being targeted because she was a woman, that the DEA was sexist and couldn't handle a powerful female trafficker. The jury didn't buy it. In 1988, Griselda Blanco was convicted on all charges. The sentence, life in prison without possibility of parole. But here's where the story gets interesting. In 2004, after serving 19 years, Griselda was released from prison. How? A technicality. The prosecution's key witness, Jorge Rivi Ayala, had been having an affair with a secretary in the DA's office. This relationship compromised the case. Griselda's lawyers argued that the trial was tainted. The judge agreed. Griselda's sentence was reduced, and on June 6, 2004, Griselda Blanco was deported to Colombia. She was 61 years old. She had spent 19 years in prison, and she was finally free. Hit that like button if you're shocked that Griselda got out after only 19 years. Griselda returned to Medellin, Colombia, in 2004. She moved into a modest apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. She lived quietly, kept a low profile. She didn't try to rebuild her empire, didn't make new connections, didn't get involved in the drug trade. Griselda was done. She spent her days watching TV, cooking, and visiting her one surviving son, Michael Corleone Blanco. Yes, she actually named her son after the Godfather character. For 8 years, Griselda lived peacefully, but her past caught up with her. September 3, 2012, 3:15 p.m., Griselda was walking out of a butcher shop in Medellin. She was carrying a bag of meat. 2 men on a motorcycle pulled up beside her. The passenger pulled out a gun and fired, twice. Both shots hit Griselda in the head. She died instantly. She was 69 years old. The assassins disappeared into traffic. They were never caught. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew why Griselda died. In the cocaine trade, you don't retire. You don't walk away. Eventually, someone from your past comes for you. And on September 3, 2012, Griselda Blanco's past found her. She was killed using the exact same method she had pioneered. 2 men on a motorcycle. The irony was not lost on anyone. So let's talk about Griselda Blanco's legacy, because Griselda changed the cocaine trade in ways most people don't realize. First, Griselda proved that women could be just as brutal, if not more brutal, than men in the drug trade. Before Griselda, the cocaine business was dominated by men: Pablo Escobar, Carlos Lehder, the Ochoa brothers. Women were seen as wives, girlfriends, or money launderers. But Griselda shattered that perception. She didn't operate behind the scenes. She was the operation. She ordered hits herself. She pulled triggers herself. She built her empire herself. Griselda showed that gender didn't matter in the cocaine trade, only ruthlessness. Second, Griselda pioneered tactics that cartels still use today: the motorcycle assassination, the use of women and children as mules, the strategy of killing witnesses and their families to prevent testimony. All of these came from Griselda. She was an innovator, a brutal, terrifying innovator. Third, Griselda's story shows the cost of absolute power. Griselda killed 3 husbands. She lost 3 of her 4 sons to violence. She spent 19 years in prison, and she died alone, shot in the street like an animal. Power didn't save her. Money didn't protect her. In the end, Griselda died the same way her victims died, violently, suddenly, senselessly. Comment below. Was Griselda Blanco the most dangerous drug trafficker in history, or was someone else worse? In 2020, Carlos Lehder was released from prison. Someone asked him in an interview, "Who was the most dangerous person you ever worked with?" Carlos didn't hesitate. "Griselda Blanco, hands down. More dangerous than Pablo Escobar." Carlos nodded. Pablo was violent, yes, but Pablo was strategic. He killed for a reason. He calculated. He thought. Griselda killed because she enjoyed it. She didn't need a reason. That made her unpredictable. And unpredictable is the most dangerous thing in this business. That's the truth about Griselda Blanco. She wasn't just a drug trafficker. She was a force of nature, unstoppable, unpredictable, uncontrollable. And Carlos Lehder, one of the most powerful drug lords in history, was terrified of her. Subscribe one more time if this story taught you something about power, fear, and what happens when you build an empire on violence. In 2024, Netflix released a series about Griselda Blanco. Griselda, starring Sofia Vergara. The series showed Griselda's rise, her brutality, her fall, and it reminded the world of the woman who once controlled Miami's cocaine trade. But the Netflix version is sanitized. The real Griselda was far worse. The real Griselda killed children. The real Griselda tortured people for fun. The real Griselda built an empire on terror. And the real Griselda made Carlos Lehder, one of the most fearless men in the cocaine trade, fear for his life. This is the story of Carlos Lehder and Griselda Blanco, a kingpin and a godmother, a man who built an island empire, a woman who controlled an entire city through fear. Carlos survived 33 years in prison and walked free. Griselda served 19 years and was murdered 2 years after release. 2 different fates, but the same lesson. In the cocaine trade, no one wins forever. Rest in violence. Griselda Blanco, 1943-2012. You killed hundreds. You built an empire. You died in the street. And Carlos Lehder, wherever you are now, 74 years old, living in silence, you survived the Godmother. That alone makes you a legend. Subscribe now for more untold stories about the most dangerous criminals in history. Because Griselda Blanco didn't just break the rules, she wrote her own, and for 30 years everyone else played by them or died. The end.